Good evening, dear listener. Tonight we return once again to the forgotten folds of history in search of moments that shaped the world in quiet ways. Whether you're cozy in bed or listening with closed eyes, I'm glad you're spending this peaceful time here. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your part of the world. Are you just waking up or about to drift off with the past whispering in your ear? If you're enjoying these calm passages through time, please do subscribe. There are many more nights like this ahead.
The Roman Empire, once the most powerful force in the ancient world, spanned vast territories and influenced cultures across Europe, Africa, and Asia. From the rise of its republic to the grandeur of its imperial rule, the empire set the foundation for modern government, law, and culture. However, its decline was just as dramatic as its rise, marked by political instability, economic struggles, and invasions from barbarian tribes. In 476 CE, the Western Roman Empire fell, but its legacy lived on through the Byzantine Empire, Christianity, and the preservation of Roman law and culture. Join us as we explore the rise, glory, and eventual fall of this incredible civilization, and discover how Rome's impact is still felt today.
The English Civil War. The English Civil War was a series of conflicts fought between the monarchy and Parliament, which had been brewing for years due to political and religious disagreements. Charles I, during his reign, sought to strengthen the monarchy's powers, but this clashed with the parliamentary system. His belief in the divine right of kings, along with his harsh religious policies and attempts to collect taxes without parliamentary consent, created widespread dissatisfaction. This led to tensions, and in 1642, these tensions boiled over into civil war. The war began with a confrontation between the royalists, who supported King Charles, and the parliamentarians, who sought to limit the king's powers. As the conflict escalated, the parliamentarians, led by figures like Oliver Cromwell, began to gain momentum. Cromwell's military leadership turned the tide in favor of Parliament, resulting in several key victories. Eventually, King Charles was captured, tried for treason, and executed in 1649, marking the end of the monarchy and the establishment of the Commonwealth. Cromwell assumed control, and England was governed without a king for the first time in centuries. However, his rule was met with resistance, and after his death, the monarchy was restored in 1660 with Charles II. The English Civil War fundamentally altered England's political and social landscape, laying the groundwork for modern democracy and constitutional monarchy. It had far-reaching effects on the political structures in England and influenced the broader course of world history.
The Roman Empire, one of the largest empires in history, spanned over centuries and profoundly impacted the world. It began as a small city-state in central Italy, founded in 753 BC, and gradually expanded its territory through military conquest, alliances, and political innovation. By the 2nd century AD, the Roman Empire controlled much of Europe, North Africa, and parts of the Middle East. The empire's strength lay in its well-organized military, its efficient bureaucracy, and its ability to assimilate diverse cultures into its fold. However, internal struggles, economic decline, and external invasions slowly weakened the empire. The division of the empire into the Western and Eastern Roman empires in the late 3rd century AD created further challenges. While the Eastern Roman Empire, known as the Byzantine Empire, endured for almost another 1,000 years, the Western Roman Empire began to crumble. In 476 AD, the last Roman emperor was overthrown, and the Western Roman Empire officially fell. Despite its collapse, the legacy of Rome lived on in its contributions to law, architecture, language, and government. The Roman Empire's rise and fall remain one of history's most studied and influential periods, with lessons that continue to shape modern civilizations. The Industrial Revolution, which began in the late 18th century, was a period of rapid industrial growth and transformation that changed the way goods were produced and reshaped societies around the world. It began in Britain, primarily in textile manufacturing, as new machinery, such as the spinning jenny and the power loom, made production faster and more efficient. The invention of the steam engine by James Watt further accelerated industrialization, enabling factories to be built in areas previously inaccessible due to water power limitations. The revolution brought about significant advancements in agriculture, transportation, and communication, including the construction of railroads and the telegraph. This period also saw the rise of urbanization, as people moved from rural areas to cities in search of work and factories. However, these changes came with significant social and economic challenges. Factory work was often grueling and unsafe, and the rapid expansion of cities led to overcrowded, unsanitary living conditions for many workers. Despite these hardships, the Industrial Revolution ultimately laid the groundwork for modern economies, leading to the rise of global trade, technological innovation, and improved living standards for many. It was a defining period in history, reshaping the world in profound ways and influencing the development of the modern industrialized world. The French Revolution, which began in 1789, was a pivotal event in world history that not only changed the course of French society, but also had lasting effects on the global political landscape. France at the time was burdened by immense debt due to costly wars, including participation in the American Revolution and lavish spending by the monarchy. King Louis XVI and his wife, Queen Marie Antoinette, faced widespread public criticism for their extravagant lifestyle, while the common people suffered from hunger, poverty, and high taxes. The revolution began with the storming of the Bastille on July 14, 1789, a symbolic act of defiance against the monarchy. The revolutionaries sought to overthrow the oppressive social and political structures and establish a government based on liberty, equality, and fraternity. Over the next few years, the revolution intensified, leading to the abolition of the monarchy, the rise of radical political factions, and the Reign of Terror, a period marked by mass executions, including that of King Louis XVI. Eventually, the revolution gave way to the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte, who would later become Emperor of France. Despite the chaos and violence, the French Revolution inspired movements for democratic reform across Europe and beyond, marking a turning point in the history of nations and shaping the modern political world.
The American Revolution, which took place between 1775 and 1783, was a pivotal event that marked the birth of the United States and a profound shift in global politics. Tensions had been rising for years between the 13 American colonies and the British Crown over issues such as taxation without representation, British interference in colonial affairs, and the colonies' desire for greater autonomy. The revolution began with the battles of Lexington and Concord in April 1775, where colonial militias faced off against British troops. Over the next several years, the conflict escalated into a full-scale war, with the colonies seeking independence from Britain. The Continental Army, led by George Washington, fought numerous battles against the British, who were the world's most powerful military force at the time. The war took a decisive turn in 1781 when British General Cornwallis surrendered at the Siege of Yorktown, effectively ending the fighting. The Treaty of Paris was signed in 1783, formally recognizing the United States' independence. The revolution also brought about the establishment of a new government based on democratic principles, enshrined in the U.S. Constitution. The American Revolution inspired other independence movements around the world, signaling the decline of monarchies and the rise of democratic ideals. It marked the beginning of a new era, influencing the course of history and the development of modern democracies. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 was a defining moment in world history, symbolizing the end of the Cold War and the reunification of Germany. For nearly 3 decades, the Berlin Wall had divided East and West Berlin, separating families and symbolizing the deep political and ideological divide between the Communist East and the Democratic West. The wall was erected in 1961 by the German Democratic Republic, GDR, to stop the mass exodus of people from East to West Berlin, which was seen as a threat to the communist regime. Over the years, the wall became a potent symbol of the oppression faced by those living under communist rule in Eastern Europe. Throughout the 1980s, however, political change began sweeping across Eastern Europe, with growing unrest and demands for greater freedom and reform. In East Germany, a series of protests erupted, calling for political change and greater openness. Amidst the pressure, the East German government announced in November 1989 that citizens would be allowed to cross the border freely. Crowds of East Germans surged to the wall, overwhelming border guards who, unprepared and unsure, opened the gates. People from both sides of the wall began tearing it down, symbolizing the end of division and the start of a new era.
The fall of the Berlin Wall not only marked the reunification of Germany, but also signaled the collapse of communist regimes across Eastern Europe, bringing an end to the Cold War and ushering in a new period of global cooperation and democracy. The Aztec Empire, one of the most powerful and advanced civilizations in pre-Columbian America, flourished in central Mexico between the 14th and early 16th centuries. The Aztecs, originally a nomadic tribe, founded their capital, Tenochtitlan, in 1325 on an island in Lake Texcoco. Over the next century, they expanded their empire through military conquest, alliances, and tribute from neighboring cities. The Aztec society was highly organized, with a complex social hierarchy, advanced agriculture, and impressive architecture, including their famous pyramids and temples. Religion played a central role in Aztec life, with a pantheon of gods and regular human sacrifices made to appease them. However, by the early 16th century, the Aztec Empire was at its peak, but it was also facing internal strife and the pressures of maintaining control over its vast territories. In 1519, the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors, led by Hernán Cortés, marked the beginning of the end for the Aztecs. Cortés and his forces, along with indigenous allies who opposed Aztec rule, laid siege to Tenochtitlan in 1521. After months of brutal fighting and the devastating impact of smallpox, the Spanish forces captured the city, effectively bringing the Aztec Empire to an end. The fall of the Aztec Empire paved the way for the colonization of the Americas by European powers, and it remains one of the most dramatic encounters between the Old and New Worlds in history. The Renaissance, a cultural movement that began in Italy in the 14th century and spread across Europe by the 16th century, marked the end of the medieval period and the beginning of the modern age. It was a time of renewed interest in the classical art, literature, and philosophies of ancient Greece and Rome. The Renaissance was characterized by a flourishing of creativity in the arts, science, politics, and thought. Key figures such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael revolutionized art with their masterpieces, blending realism, human emotion, and perspective. In science, figures like Nicholas Copernicus, Galileo Galilei, and Johannes Kepler challenged long-held views about the universe, setting the stage for the scientific revolution. This era also saw the rise of humanism, which emphasized the value of human experience, reason, and individual potential. The printing press, invented by Johannes Gutenberg, played a significant role in spreading Renaissance ideas, making books more accessible and enabling the rapid dissemination of knowledge. In politics, the Renaissance saw the rise of powerful city-states such as Florence and Venice, which became centers of trade, culture, and political innovation. The period was also marked by the exploration of new lands, with explorers like Christopher Columbus and Vasco da Gama expanding the horizons of the known world. The Renaissance was not just a revival of ancient knowledge, but also a transformative period that laid the foundations for the modern world in art, science, literature, and politics.
The Renaissance, a cultural and intellectual movement that began in Italy during the 14th century and spread throughout Europe by the 16th century, marks one of the most significant turning points in Western history. This period, often referred to as the Rebirth, was characterized by a renewed interest in the classical knowledge, art, and philosophies of ancient Greece and Rome. The Renaissance is often considered the bridge between the medieval era, dominated by feudalism and religious influence, and the modern age, which saw the rise of individualism, scientific inquiry, and artistic innovation. One of the defining features of the Renaissance was its focus on humanism, a philosophy that emphasized the value of human experience, reason, and potential. Humanists believed that individuals were capable of shaping their own destiny and sought to revive the classical ideals of human achievement. This philosophical movement encouraged a new approach to art, science, and education, and it laid the foundation for many of the changes that defined the period. In the realm of art, the Renaissance brought about a revolution in style, technique, and subject matter. Artists such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, and Donatello created works that combined realism, human emotion, and the principles of perspective. These artists focused on portraying the human form with greater accuracy, drawing inspiration from nature and the human body. Da Vinci's Mona Lisa and Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling are two of the most iconic pieces of Renaissance art, illustrating the period's mastery of technique and its exploration of the human condition. The Renaissance was also a time of tremendous scientific advancement.
Figures like Nicolaus Copernicus, who proposed the heliocentric theory of the universe, Galileo Galilei, who used the telescope to study the stars, and Johannes Kepler, who formulated the laws of planetary motion, challenged the long-standing views of the cosmos. These revolutionary discoveries laid the groundwork for the scientific revolution, which would forever change our understanding of the natural world. This period marked the transition from a world dominated by religious dogma to one driven by empirical observation and scientific reasoning. The invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century had a profound impact on the spread of Renaissance ideas. Before the press, books were rare and expensive, limiting access to knowledge. Gutenberg's invention allowed for the mass production of books, making them more affordable and accessible to a wider audience. This led to the rapid dissemination of Renaissance ideas across Europe, fueling the spread of humanism, scientific inquiry, and new artistic techniques. Politically, the Renaissance saw the rise of powerful city-states like Florence, Venice, and Milan, which became centers of trade, culture, and political power. Florence, in particular, was home to influential families like the Medici, who were major patrons of the arts and played a significant role in the flourishing of Renaissance culture. The Renaissance also saw the development of new political philosophies, with thinkers like Niccolò Machiavelli offering advice on statecraft and leadership in his famous work, The Prince. The period was also a time of exploration and expansion. Explorers like Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, and Ferdinand Magellan sought new trade routes and discovered new lands, dramatically expanding the geographical knowledge of the world. Their voyages opened the door to global trade and laid the foundation for the European colonial empires that would follow in the centuries to come. In summary, the Renaissance was a period of profound transformation that reshaped the arts, science, politics, and the very way humans viewed themselves and the world around them. It was a time of intellectual curiosity, creativity, and exploration that led to the development of modern Western thought. The Renaissance's influence can still be seen today in the fields of art, literature, science, and philosophy, making it one of the most significant periods in history.
The Renaissance, a cultural and intellectual movement that began in Italy during the 14th century and spread throughout Europe by the 16th century, marks one of the most significant turning points in Western history. This period, often referred to as the Rebirth, was characterized by a renewed interest in the classical knowledge, art, and philosophies of ancient Greece and Rome. The Renaissance is often considered the bridge between the medieval era, dominated by feudalism and religious influence, and the modern age, which saw the rise of individualism, scientific inquiry, and artistic innovation. One of the defining features of the Renaissance was its focus on humanism, a philosophy that emphasized the value of human experience, reason, and potential. Humanists believed that individuals were capable of shaping their own destiny and sought to revive the classical ideals of human achievement. This philosophical movement encouraged a new approach to art, science, and education, and it laid the foundation for many of the changes that defined the period. In the realm of art, the Renaissance brought about a revolution in style, technique, and subject matter. Artists such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, and Donatello created works that combined realism, human emotion, and the principles of perspective. These artists focused on portraying the human form with greater accuracy, drawing inspiration from nature and the human body. Da Vinci's Mona Lisa and Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling are two of the most iconic pieces of Renaissance art, illustrating the period's mastery of technique and its exploration of the human condition. The Renaissance was also a time of tremendous scientific advancement. Figures like Nicolaus Copernicus, who proposed the heliocentric theory of the universe, Galileo Galilei, who used the telescope to study the stars, and Johannes Kepler, who formulated the laws of planetary motion, challenged the long-standing views of the cosmos. These revolutionary discoveries laid the groundwork for the scientific revolution, which would forever change our understanding of the natural world. This period marked the transition from a world dominated by religious dogma to one driven by empirical observation and scientific reasoning. The invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century had a profound impact on the spread of Renaissance ideas. Before the press, books were rare and expensive, limiting access to knowledge. Gutenberg's invention allowed for the mass production of books, making them more affordable and accessible to a wider audience.
This led to the rapid dissemination of Renaissance ideas across Europe, fueling the spread of humanism, scientific inquiry, and new artistic techniques. Politically, the Renaissance saw the rise of powerful city-states like Florence, Venice, and Milan, which became centers of trade, culture, and political power. Florence, in particular, was home to influential families like the Medici, who were major patrons of the arts and played a significant role in the flourishing of Renaissance culture. The Renaissance also saw the development of new political philosophies, with thinkers like Niccolò Machiavelli offering advice on statecraft and leadership in his famous work, The Prince. The period was also a time of exploration and expansion. Explorers like Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, and Ferdinand Magellan sought new trade routes and discovered new lands, dramatically expanding the geographical knowledge of the world. Their voyages opened the door to global trade and laid the foundation for the European colonial empires that would follow in the centuries to come. In summary, the Renaissance was a period of profound transformation that reshaped the arts, science, politics, and the very way humans viewed themselves and the world around them. It was a time of intellectual curiosity, creativity, and exploration that led to the development of modern Western thought. The Renaissance's influence can still be seen today in the fields of art, literature, science, and philosophy, making it one of the most significant periods in history. The Industrial Revolution, which began in the late 18th century, was a period of rapid industrial growth and transformation that changed the way goods were produced and reshaped societies around the world. It began in Britain, primarily in textile manufacturing, as new machinery such as the spinning jenny and the power loom made production faster and more efficient. The invention of the steam engine by James Watt further accelerated industrialization, enabling factories to be built in areas previously inaccessible due to water power limitations. The revolution brought about significant advancements in agriculture, transportation, and communication, including the construction of railroads and the telegraph. This period also saw the rise of urbanization as people moved from rural areas to cities in search of work and factories. However, these changes came with significant social and economic challenges. Factory work was often grueling and unsafe, and the rapid expansion of cities led to overcrowded, unsanitary living conditions for many workers. Despite these hardships, the Industrial Revolution ultimately laid the groundwork for modern economies, leading to the rise of global trade, technological innovation, and improved living standards for many. It was a defining period in history, reshaping the world in profound ways and influencing the development of the modern industrial world.
The impact of the Renaissance on society and culture. The Renaissance had a profound impact not just on art and science, but on society as a whole. It fostered a shift in how individuals saw themselves and their role in the world. The emphasis on humanism encouraged people to think critically and independently, marking a departure from the medieval view that placed greater focus on religion and the afterlife. Humanists believed that people should focus on the improvement of life in the here and now, seeking to understand the world around them through observation, reasoning, and inquiry. In education, the Renaissance introduced a new curriculum that was centered around classical texts and languages like Latin and Greek, and focused on subjects like rhetoric, history, and ethics. This new approach to education spread through Europe, influencing the development of schools, universities, and scholarly societies. The humanist movement not only inspired intellectuals, but also promoted the idea of lifelong learning, encouraging people to question traditional beliefs and seek knowledge in all areas of life. The role of the Medici family and other patrons. One of the key factors in the flourishing of the Renaissance was the patronage of wealthy families, particularly in Italy. The Medici family of Florence, in particular, played a pivotal role in supporting the arts and learning. Their financial backing allowed artists, scientists, and philosophers to pursue their work without the constant worry of financial hardship. Through their patronage, the Medici helped fund some of the greatest masterpieces of the era, including works by Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and Botticelli. The family's wealth came from banking, and their political influence in Florence helped ensure that they were able to shape the cultural and artistic landscape of the time. Other Italian city-states, such as Venice and Milan, also supported the arts and innovation, creating a competitive environment that encouraged further development in all fields. These patrons of the arts helped create an environment in which creativity could thrive, leading to the proliferation of new artistic techniques and ideas that would define the Renaissance period. The Renaissance had an enduring impact on the development of Western thought. It laid the foundations for the Enlightenment, a movement that would continue the Renaissance emphasis on reason and individual rights. The questioning of traditional authority that began with the Renaissance became a defining characteristic of later intellectual movements, and ideas about the importance of science, human rights, and education continued to develop and influence society.
The invention of the printing press also played a crucial role in disseminating Renaissance ideas across Europe. Books became more accessible to the general public, allowing new ideas to spread quickly and creating a more literate and informed society. The ability to mass-produce texts also meant that scientific discoveries, literary works, and political philosophies could reach a wider audience, which in turn encouraged further innovation and debate. In summary, the Renaissance was not just a time of artistic and intellectual flourishing, it was a pivotal period that reshaped how people viewed the world and their place in it. By emphasizing humanism, education, and exploration, the Renaissance laid the groundwork for many of the developments that would shape the modern world. Its legacy continues to influence our cultural, intellectual, and scientific landscapes, making it one of the most important periods in history. The legacy of the Renaissance. The Renaissance was a transformative period that not only shaped the course of European history, but also influenced the development of the modern world. Its impact extended far beyond the realms of art and science, touching nearly every aspect of life in Europe. The rediscovery of classical knowledge and the embrace of humanism set the stage for significant changes in society, politics, and culture. The Renaissance encouraged the questioning of old traditions, paving the way for new ideas in philosophy, science, and politics. One of the lasting legacies of the Renaissance was the profound shift in the role of the individual. The Renaissance celebrated human achievement and potential, leading to a culture of individualism. People were encouraged to explore their talents, seek knowledge, and contribute to society in ways that had not been emphasized during the Middle Ages. The idea of individualism became central to modern Western thought, influencing everything from the rise of modern democracy to the development of personal freedoms and human rights. In the realm of science, the Renaissance laid the foundation for the scientific revolution that would follow in the 17th century. The emphasis on observation, experimentation, and rational thought during the Renaissance led to groundbreaking discoveries in fields like astronomy, anatomy, and physics. The works of Renaissance scientists like Leonardo da Vinci, who studied human anatomy, and Nicholas Copernicus, who proposed the heliocentric theory of the universe, set the stage for later scientific advancements that would change humanity's understanding of the world. The Renaissance also had a profound impact on politics. The development of new political ideas, such as those put forth by Niccolo Machiavelli in his work The Prince, encouraged rulers to adopt more pragmatic and strategic approaches to governance. These ideas would influence the development of modern political theory and contribute to the rise of the modern nation-state. Furthermore, the Renaissance period witnessed the rise of powerful and influential city-states, especially in Italy, which became centers of political, economic, and cultural activity. These city-states laid the groundwork for the future political landscape of Europe. The Renaissance's influence also extended to literature, with writers like Dante Alighieri, Geoffrey Chaucer, and Petrarch producing works that emphasized human experience and individual emotion. These literary works became cornerstones of Western literature, inspiring countless writers and thinkers in the centuries that followed. The Renaissance and the Age of Exploration. The Renaissance also played a significant role in the Age of Exploration, as European explorers began to venture beyond the known world in search of new trade routes, territories, and resources. The spirit of curiosity and the desire to learn more about the world that had defined the Renaissance period were key motivators behind the explorations of figures like Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, and Ferdinand Magellan. Their voyages not only expanded the geographical boundaries of the known world, but also established new connections between different cultures, leading to the exchange of ideas, goods, and technologies across continents. The Age of Exploration, fueled by Renaissance curiosity, led to the establishment of European colonial empires, which would have a profound impact on global history for centuries to come. These explorations helped to spread Renaissance ideas to the farthest corners of the earth, influencing cultures and civilizations in Africa, Asia, and the Americas.
The Renaissance was a transformative period that reshaped European history and influenced the modern world in profound ways. This cultural movement, beginning in the 14th century, celebrated the rediscovery of classical Greek and Roman knowledge and emphasized humanism, the belief in the potential and achievements of individuals. It encouraged people to think critically, explore their talents, and pursue education in fields like art, science, literature, and politics. The Renaissance marked the end of the medieval mindset and laid the foundation for modern Western thought. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo revolutionized art by emphasizing realism, human emotion, and perspective, creating timeless masterpieces. In science, figures like Nicolaus Copernicus, who proposed the heliocentric theory, and Galileo Galilei, who advanced the use of the telescope, laid the groundwork for the scientific revolution. The printing press, invented by Johannes Gutenberg, allowed for the rapid spread of Renaissance ideas, making books more accessible and fueling intellectual growth across Europe. Politically, the Renaissance saw the rise of influential city-states like Florence and Venice, which became centers of culture and commerce. Thinkers like Niccolo Machiavelli in The Prince developed new ideas about statecraft, laying the foundation for modern political theory.
The Renaissance also inspired the age of exploration as explorers like Columbus, Vasco da Gama, and Magellan ventured into uncharted territories, spreading Renaissance ideas across the globe. This period of discovery and expansion led to the establishment of European colonial empires, profoundly shaping the future of the world. Ultimately, the Renaissance transformed every aspect of life, from art and science to politics and exploration, and its legacy continues to influence the modern world. The Industrial Revolution, which began in the late 18th century, was a period of profound transformation in how goods were produced and how societies functioned. It started in Britain, where new machinery like the spinning jenny and power loom revolutionized textile manufacturing, making production faster and more efficient. The invention of the steam engine by James Watt provided a new source of energy that powered factories, helping industry to grow and spread. This technological progress led to innovations in transportation, with the creation of railways and steamships, which made it easier to move goods and people across vast distances. The growth of factories caused a shift from rural agricultural economies to urban industrial ones, leading to the rise of cities as centers of production and commerce. The Industrial Revolution also brought significant changes in agriculture, as new farming techniques and machinery allowed for more efficient food production, supporting growing urban populations. However, this rapid industrialization also led to numerous social and environmental challenges. Factory work was often grueling, with long hours and unsafe conditions, while the urbanization that accompanied industrial growth led to overcrowded and unsanitary living conditions for many workers. Despite these hardships, the Industrial Revolution laid the foundation for modern economies, driving innovation in technology, manufacturing, and global trade. It created new social classes, including the working class and the capitalist class, and shifted the balance of power in society. Over time, these changes paved the way for further advancements in technology and the development of modern industrialized economies that shaped the world as we know it today. The French Revolution, which began in 1789, was a period of radical social and political change in France that fundamentally altered the course of history. It was driven by widespread discontent with the monarchy, particularly the extravagant spending of King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette, while the majority of the population struggled with poverty and hunger. The revolution began with the Estates General in May 1789, where the Third Estate, representing the common people, broke away and formed the National Assembly, demanding more political power. The storming of the Bastille on July 14, 1789, became a symbol of the revolution, marking the beginning of widespread protests and upheaval. Over the next few years, revolutionary leaders like Maximilien Robespierre and Georges Danton called for the abolition of the monarchy and the establishment of a republic based on the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. In 1793, King Louis XVI was executed, signaling the end of the monarchy, but the revolution soon descended into the Reign of Terror, where thousands of perceived enemies of the revolution were executed by guillotine. The political chaos and violence finally led to the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte, who seized power in 1799 and eventually declared himself Emperor of France. Despite the bloodshed and turmoil, the French Revolution inspired democratic movements across Europe and beyond, advocating for the rights of individuals and the concept of popular sovereignty. It also led to significant social reforms, including the secularization of France and the spread of revolutionary ideas, which would influence future political revolutions and the development of modern democratic societies.
The Trojan War, a legendary conflict in Greek mythology, is said to have taken place around the 12th century BCE, fought between the Greeks, Achaeans, and the city of Troy. The war was sparked by the abduction of Helen, the beautiful wife of King Menelaus of Sparta, by Paris, a prince of Troy. This act of betrayal led to a coalition of Greek kings, led by Menelaus's brother, Agamemnon, to wage war against Troy to retrieve Helen. The siege of Troy lasted for 10 years, with both sides suffering heavy losses. Key Greek heroes like Achilles, Odysseus, and Agamemnon played pivotal roles, while the Trojans were led by Hector, the greatest of their warriors. The gods and goddesses of Olympus were also deeply involved, with each deity taking sides and influencing the outcome of battles. Achilles, the mightiest Greek warrior, was central to the war, but after a quarrel with Agamemnon over a captive woman, he withdrew from battle, causing a shift in the tide of the war. Hector's death at the hands of Achilles marked a significant turning point, but the war still continued. The Greeks, unable to breach the walls of Troy, used cunning to gain victory. The most famous tactic was the use of the Trojan horse, a massive wooden horse filled with Greek soldiers, which was presented as a gift to the Trojans. The unsuspecting Trojans brought the horse inside the city, and that night, Greek soldiers hidden inside emerged and opened the gates for the Greek army to invade. Troy was sacked and burned to the ground, marking the end of the war. The fall of Troy was a pivotal moment in Greek mythology,
with many of the Greek heroes suffering tragic fates afterward, including Odysseus, whose long journey home from the war became the subject of the epic poem The Odyssey. The Trojan War, with its themes of heroism, betrayal, and divine intervention, has been immortalized in various works of literature, most notably in Homer's Iliad, and continues to captivate the imagination of readers and historians alike. The Aztec Empire, one of the most advanced and powerful civilizations in pre-Columbian America, emerged in the 14th century in central Mexico. The Aztecs, initially a nomadic tribe, founded their capital, Tenochtitlan, on an island in Lake Texcoco in 1325, and over the next century they expanded their territory through military conquest and strategic alliances. The Aztec society was highly structured, with a complex political system, advanced agricultural practices, and a rich cultural heritage, including impressive architecture and monumental pyramids. Religion was central to their daily life, with a pantheon of gods and a belief in the need for human sacrifice to appease these gods. The Aztec Empire reached its peak in the early 16th century under the rule of Emperor Montezuma II, but was also facing internal strife, economic challenges, and the pressures of maintaining control over its vast empire. In 1519, the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors, led by Hernán Cortés, marked the beginning of the Aztec Empire's downfall. Cortés, aided by indigenous allies who opposed Aztec rule, laid siege to Tenochtitlan. After months of brutal fighting, compounded by the devastating effects of smallpox, the Spanish forces captured the city in 1521. The fall of Tenochtitlan and the subsequent collapse of the Aztec Empire paved the way for the Spanish conquest of Mexico and the establishment of Spanish colonial rule in the Americas. Despite the end of the empire, the legacy of the Aztecs, including their contributions to agriculture, medicine, and astronomy, continues to influence modern Mexico and the wider world. The American Revolution, which took place between 1775 and 1783, was a pivotal event in world history that led to the independence of the 13 colonies from Great Britain. Tensions had been building for years between the American colonies and the British government, primarily over issues of taxation without representation and the desire for greater autonomy. In 1775, fighting broke out between colonial militias and British troops at the battles of Lexington and Concord, marking the beginning of the war. The Continental Congress, led by figures such as George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin, organized the colonies into a unified force against the British. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, the colonists were able to rally support from other nations, especially France, which provided crucial military and financial assistance. The turning point of the war came in 1781, when British General Cornwallis was forced to surrender at the Siege of Yorktown, largely due to the assistance of French forces and the strategic leadership of Washington. The Treaty of Paris, signed in 1783, formally ended the war and recognized the United States' independence. The American Revolution had far-reaching consequences, inspiring other independence movements around the world and laying the foundations for a new democratic government in the form of the U.S. Constitution. It also marked the beginning of the decline of European colonialism and the rise of new political ideologies based on liberty, equality, and popular sovereignty.
The Industrial Revolution, which began in the late 18th century, was a period of profound transformation in the way goods were produced and how society functioned. It started in Britain, primarily in the textile industry, with the invention of machines like the spinning jenny and the power loom, which made production faster and more efficient. These machines helped increase the output of goods, particularly textiles, and sparked a wave of innovation that spread to other industries. The steam engine, invented by James Watt, became a pivotal invention of the era, providing a new source of energy that powered factories, trains, and ships. This advancement in technology led to significant changes in transportation, with the creation of railways and steamships, which dramatically reduced the time and cost of transporting goods and people. As a result, markets expanded, and the global trade network grew, bringing goods from one corner of the world to another. The rapid industrialization, however, had its costs. In cities, populations swelled as people moved from rural areas in search of work. The demand for factory labor led to the rise of industrialized urban centers. These new industrial cities, such as Manchester, Liverpool, and Birmingham, became overcrowded, and living conditions were often squalid. The factories themselves were often unsafe, with workers, many of them women and children, subjected to long hours, low wages, and hazardous conditions. Despite these challenges, the Industrial Revolution led to significant improvements in the production of goods. It also led to the rise of new social classes. The growing industrial economy created a wealthy capitalist class of factory owners and entrepreneurs who invested in the burgeoning industries. At the same time, a new working class emerged, characterized by the laborers who worked in factories, mines, and other industrial settings. These workers often lived in difficult conditions, which eventually led to the rise of labor movements and calls for workers' rights. Politically, the Industrial Revolution had far-reaching effects. The rise of industrial capitalism led to new political ideologies, including socialism and liberalism, which called for greater rights for workers and more democratic systems of government. In the broader context, the Industrial Revolution also triggered a series of developments in technology, science, and communication. The invention of the telegraph by Samuel Morse in the 1830s revolutionized communication, allowing messages to be transmitted over long distances almost instantaneously. The development of new materials, such as steel, and advances in chemical processes enabled the construction of new infrastructure, including bridges, railroads, and buildings. The Industrial Revolution also brought about a major shift in agriculture. New farming techniques and machinery, such as the mechanical reaper and the seed drill, allowed farmers to increase production and efficiency. This led to a decrease in the number of workers needed in agriculture, causing many to migrate to cities in search of work. While the revolution helped to bring about unprecedented economic growth, it also created stark inequalities. The rise of factory-based industry created vast wealth for factory owners and entrepreneurs, but the working class lived in poverty. Many industrial workers worked in unsafe conditions, and the rapid urbanization of cities led to unsanitary living environments. These issues contributed to social unrest, and labor unions began to form to demand better working conditions and higher wages. By the mid-19th century, the Industrial Revolution had spread beyond Britain to other parts of Europe and North America. In the United States, the Industrial Revolution spurred the growth of industries like textiles, steel, and oil. It also brought about significant social and economic changes, including the growth of cities, the expansion of railroads, and the rise of industrial capitalism. As industrialization spread across the globe, it triggered major social and political changes. In response to the inequalities created by industrialization, new political movements emerged, including socialism and communism, which sought to address the exploitation of workers. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels published the Communist Manifesto in 1848, calling for the overthrow of capitalist systems and the establishment of a classless society. These ideas would go on to influence political movements in the 20th century. The social and economic changes brought about by the Industrial Revolution also had profound effects on culture. The rise of factories and mass production led to a consumer culture where goods became more affordable and accessible to a wider range of people. This created a demand for consumer goods, which in turn fueled further industrial growth. As industrial production increased, so did the availability of goods, and the rise of new forms of entertainment, such as theater, literature, and music, became central to urban life. The Industrial Revolution also had a significant impact on the environment. The mass production of goods led to the increased use of natural resources such as coal and iron, and contributed to environmental degradation. Factories and machines spewed smoke and pollutants into the air, leading to air and water pollution in many industrial cities. The increased use of coal also contributed to the depletion of natural resources and the environmental damage caused by mining. Despite these negative impacts, the Industrial Revolution played a pivotal role in shaping the modern world. It led to the creation of new technologies, industries, and systems of production that transformed economies and societies. It brought about unprecedented levels of wealth and prosperity, but it also created new forms of inequality and social unrest. In the long term, The Industrial Revolution laid the foundation for the development of modern industrial economies and advanced technological societies. It helped to create the modern world as we know it today, for better and for worse, and its legacy continues to shape the economic, social, and environmental challenges of the 21st century. The French Revolution, which began in 1789, was a defining moment in world history, marking the end of absolute monarchy and the rise of a republic based on the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. France, in the late 18th century, was in dire financial straits, burdened by debt from prolonged wars, including involvement in the American Revolution, and lavish spending by King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette. The French population, especially the common people, were suffering from widespread poverty, hunger, and high taxes, while the nobility and clergy enjoyed privileges. In 1789, widespread discontent led to the convening of the Estates General, a representative assembly that included the three estates, the clergy, the nobility, and the common people. When the third estate, representing the commoners, was denied equal representation, they declared themselves the National Assembly and took an oath in the tennis court to not disband until they had written a new constitution for France. This marked the beginning of a revolutionary period in France. The storming of the Bastille on July 14, 1789, became a symbol of the revolution, as Parisians, fearing that the king would suppress the National Assembly, seized the prison which held political prisoners. This event ignited revolutionary fervor across France, and many cities followed suit with their own uprisings. Over the following months, the revolutionaries worked to dismantle the old feudal system, abolishing privileges held by the nobility and clergy, and the National Assembly introduced the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, outlining the basic rights and freedoms of all citizens. By 1791, the National Assembly had completed the first French Constitution, which limited the powers of the king. But King Louis XVI and his family attempted to escape Paris, hoping to gain support from royalists in other parts of France. Their failed attempt to flee and their subsequent arrest further eroded the monarchy's legitimacy. By 1792, the monarchy was abolished entirely, and France was declared a republic. The revolutionaries, now divided into factions, faced mounting threats from both external enemies and internal uprisings. In 1793, the radical Jacobin leader Maximilien Robespierre and his allies seized power, leading to what became known as the Reign of Terror. During this period, the revolutionary government, fearing counter-revolutionary activity, executed thousands of perceived enemies, including King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette, by guillotine. The violence and fear that marked the Reign of Terror alienated many, and in 1794, Robespierre was arrested and executed, signaling the end of the radical phase of the revolution. After Robespierre's fall, the revolution entered a more moderate phase, and a new constitution was adopted, establishing the Directory, a 5-member executive body. However, the Directory proved to be weak and corrupt, unable to solve France's ongoing financial problems and unable to quell unrest. Amid the chaos, a young general named Napoleon Bonaparte rose to prominence. In 1799, Napoleon staged a coup d'etat, overthrowing the Directory and establishing the consulate, with himself as first consul. Napoleon's rise marked the end of the French Revolution, as he consolidated power and eventually declared himself Emperor of the French in 1804. While the revolution had achieved many of its goals, including the end of absolute monarchy and the establishment of a republic, it had also led to considerable violence and instability. Napoleon's reign brought many of the revolution's ideals to fruition, particularly the spread of legal equality and the establishment of secular rule. However, it also led to the establishment of an authoritarian regime under Napoleon's rule. Despite the violent and turbulent nature of the revolution, its ideals continued to resonate across Europe and the world. The French Revolution inspired numerous other revolutions, including in Latin America, and its principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity became foundational to modern political thought. The revolution also marked the beginning of the end of feudalism in Europe and set the stage for the rise of modern democratic and republican systems. In summary, the French Revolution was a complex and transformative event that reshaped France and had a lasting impact on the world. It was driven by social, economic, and political inequalities, and its legacy can be seen in the rise of republicanism, the spread of revolutionary ideals, and the continued struggle for individual rights and freedoms. Despite the violent and turbulent nature of the revolution, the French Revolution fundamentally changed the course of history, and its lessons continue to resonate in the modern world.
The Roman Empire, one of the most influential civilizations in history, began as a small city-state on the Italian peninsula in the 8th century BCE. Its rise to power was gradual, beginning with the founding of the Roman Republic in 509 BCE after the overthrow of the Roman monarchy. The Republic was characterized by a complex political system with elected officials and a Senate, which initially limited the power of individual leaders. Over time, Rome expanded its territory through military conquest, alliances, and strategic diplomacy, gradually establishing control over much of the Mediterranean world. Roman legions, known for their discipline and organization, were pivotal in expanding Roman influence. By the 2nd century BCE, Rome had conquered territories in Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, including Greece, Spain, Egypt, and parts of Gaul. During this period, Rome faced internal challenges, including class struggles between the patricians, aristocrats, and plebeians, common people, as well as the rise of powerful military leaders like Julius Caesar, who sought to increase their personal power. In 44 BCE, Caesar was assassinated by members of the Senate, fearing his growing power. But his death did not end the conflict. Instead, it marked the end of the Roman Republic and led to the rise of the Roman Empire. In 27 BCE, Augustus, the adopted heir of Julius Caesar, became the first Roman emperor, marking the beginning of the Pax Romana, a period of relative peace and prosperity that lasted for over 2 centuries. Augustus implemented a series of political reforms that strengthened the empire, including the creation of a standing army and a centralized bureaucracy. The empire reached its greatest territorial extent under Emperor Trajan in the early 2nd century CE, controlling vast territories across Europe, Asia, and Africa. During this time, Rome became a center of culture, law, and commerce, and its achievements in engineering, architecture, and governance set the foundation for modern Western civilization. However, the Roman Empire faced numerous challenges, both internal and external, that eventually led to its decline. Political instability, economic troubles, and military overextension weakened the empire. The division of the empire into the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantine Empire, in the 4th century CE, made it harder to defend its borders and manage its vast territories. Barbarian invasions from groups like the Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns further strained the empire. In 410 CE, the Visigoths sacked Rome, and in 455 CE, the Vandals did the same. The Western Roman Empire, weakened by internal divisions and external pressures, finally fell in 476 CE, when the last Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. The fall of the Western Roman Empire marked the end of ancient Rome and the beginning of the Middle Ages in Europe. Despite its fall, the legacy of Rome lived on through the Byzantine Empire, which continued for nearly 1,000 years after the fall of Rome. The Eastern Roman Empire preserved much of Roman culture, law, and governance, and its influence continued to shape the development of Europe and the Mediterranean world. The rise and fall of the Roman Empire had a profound impact on history, and its political, military, and cultural innovations laid the foundation for much of modern Western civilization. Roman law, engineering, and architectural techniques continue to influence the world today, and the ideals of Roman governance, such as republicanism and citizenship, remain central to modern political thought. In conclusion, the Roman Empire's rise and eventual fall is one of the most important narratives in world history. Its military conquests, cultural achievements, and political innovations shaped the development of the Western world, and its legacy continues to resonate in the modern era. The story of Rome is one of ambition, power, and eventual decline, but also one of enduring influence that has shaped the course of history for centuries.
The rise of the Roman Empire was not just the result of military might, but also political strategy, with figures like Julius Caesar and Augustus leading the way. The transformation of the Roman Republic into the Roman Empire was a significant shift in governance, centralizing power under a single ruler, Augustus. This change marked the beginning of a period known as the Pax Romana, a time of relative peace and prosperity that lasted for about 200 years. During this period, the empire experienced economic growth, territorial expansion, and an increase in trade and cultural exchange. The Roman Empire's vast road network and its innovative engineering feats, such as aqueducts and public baths, contributed to its success. However, despite these achievements, cracks began to appear in the empire's foundation. Internal divisions, political corruption, and the pressure of defending such a large empire from external invaders placed significant strain on its resources. The empire's military, which had once been the backbone of its success, was stretched thin, and loyalty within the ranks of its legions began to wane. Furthermore, the Roman economy was increasingly dependent on slave labor, and as territories were conquered, the supply of slaves diminished, leading to economic instability. The social fabric of Roman society also began to show signs of strain. The gap between the wealthy elite and the poor grew wider, and the political system became more unstable. As emperors came and went, the empire faced numerous challenges, including civil wars and uprisings. The division of the empire into eastern and western halves in 395 CE further weakened its unity, with the Western Roman Empire struggling to defend its borders against barbarian invasions. In contrast, the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, managed to survive and thrive for several more centuries. The fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE was a result of numerous factors, including economic decline, military overextension, and the constant pressure from invading barbarian tribes. The Visigoths' sack of Rome in 410 CE and the Vandals' destruction in 455 CE were significant blows to the empire's prestige and power. Finally, in 476 CE, the last Roman emperor in the West, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer, marking the end of the Western Roman Empire. Despite its fall, the Roman legacy lived on through the Byzantine Empire, which preserved many aspects of Roman culture, law, and governance. The Byzantine Empire, with its capital in Constantinople, became a beacon of Roman traditions for nearly 1,000 years after the fall of Rome. The influence of Rome persisted in many aspects of Western civilization, from law and government to architecture and engineering. Roman concepts such as citizenship, legal rights, and republicanism laid the foundation for modern democratic systems. In conclusion, the Roman Empire's rise and fall encapsulates a story of ambition, power, and eventual decline, but also one of enduring legacy. Its political, military, and cultural achievements have had a lasting impact on the world. The empire's ability to assimilate different cultures and manage vast territories has been studied by historians and political thinkers for centuries, and its influence continues to shape modern societies. The fall of Rome did not mark the end of Roman civilization, but rather the beginning of a new era, with the Byzantine Empire and later Western Europe carrying forward many of its traditions. The story of the Roman Empire remains a vital part of the historical narrative that continues to shape modern societies.
The legacy of the Roman Empire continued to influence the world long after the fall of its western half. The Eastern Roman Empire, known as the Byzantine Empire, managed to preserve Roman law, culture, and military organization for nearly 1,000 years after the collapse of Rome. The Byzantine Empire, centered in Constantinople, served as a bridge between the ancient and medieval worlds, preserving Greek and Roman knowledge and passing it on to the Renaissance. The Byzantines also played a significant role in the spread of Christianity, which had become the dominant religion of the Roman Empire by the 4th century CE. The conversion of Emperor Constantine to Christianity in the early 4th century was a turning point, and under his reign, Christianity became the official religion of the empire. This shift profoundly altered the religious and cultural landscape of Europe, with the Church becoming a powerful institution in both the Byzantine and Western worlds. Over time, however, the Byzantine Empire began to weaken due to internal strife, external invasions, and economic challenges. The rise of Islam in the 7th century, with the rapid expansion of the Arab Empire, placed significant pressure on the Byzantine Empire's borders, leading to the loss of key territories, including Egypt, Syria, and parts of North Africa. In the 11th and 12th centuries, the Crusades, a series of religious wars initiated by the Catholic Church to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim rule, further strained the Byzantine Empire. The Fourth Crusade, in 1204, resulted in the sack of Constantinople, a devastating blow to the empire's power and prestige. Though the Byzantine Empire managed to survive for another 2 centuries, it never fully recovered from the Fourth Crusade. In 1453, after centuries of decline, the Byzantine Empire came to an end with the fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Turks. The capture of the city by Sultan Mehmed II marked the definitive end of the Roman Empire's eastern half and the beginning of a new era in world history. Despite the fall of both the Western and Eastern Roman empires, the Roman legacy endured in many ways. Roman law became the foundation for legal systems in many European countries, and Roman engineering, architecture, and military organization influenced subsequent civilizations. The Roman Empire's concept of citizenship and republicanism shaped the political thinking of later societies, including the development of democratic institutions in Europe and the Americas. The Roman Catholic Church, which grew out of the Christianized Roman Empire, played a crucial role in preserving Roman traditions and spreading Roman culture throughout medieval Europe. In conclusion, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire is one of the most significant events in world history. From its early days as a small city-state to its peak as a vast empire spanning 3 continents, Rome's influence shaped the course of civilization. Though the empire eventually fell, its political, cultural, and legal legacies continue to shape the modern world. The story of Rome serves as a powerful reminder of the fragility of empires and the enduring nature of cultural influence, leaving a legacy that continues to echo through history.
The Roman Empire story is a testament to the complexity of human civilization and the ever-changing dynamics of power. Rome's political innovations, such as the Senate, the concept of citizenship, and the establishment of Roman law, have left a profound impact on the development of governance systems throughout history. These political institutions provided a model for later governments, especially those emerging in Europe and the Americas. The Roman system of law, known as Roman jurisprudence, became the foundation of legal systems in many countries, influencing modern legal practices and rights. The structure of Roman governance also laid the groundwork for the idea of a republic, where leaders were elected by citizens and served the people. This idea would resonate centuries later, during the founding of the United States and the establishment of modern democratic systems. In addition to its political and legal contributions, Rome's cultural achievements were monumental. Roman architecture, engineering, and urban planning set standards for construction and city building that are still admired today. The Romans introduced innovations such as concrete, which allowed for the creation of massive structures like the Colosseum and the Pantheon. The Roman road network, one of the most advanced in the ancient world, connected vast territories, facilitating trade, communication, and military movement. Roman aqueducts and water systems, which carried water over long distances to cities and towns, were feats of engineering that contributed to public health and urban development. Roman art and literature, influenced by Greek traditions, were integral to the cultural life of the empire. Poets like Virgil and Ovid, historians like Livy and Tacitus, and philosophers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius contributed to the development of Western thought. Roman education emphasized rhetoric, grammar, and philosophy, shaping the intellectual development of the empire. However, the fall of Rome was not simply the result of external threats. Internal factors, including political corruption, economic decline, and social unrest, weakened the empire from within. The Roman elite became increasingly disconnected from the common people, leading to growing resentment and discontent. Economic troubles, including inflation, high taxes, and reliance on slave labor, undermined the empire's financial stability. The military, once the backbone of Roman power, also became a source of instability. As the empire expanded, it became harder to manage and defend its vast territories. The Roman army increasingly relied on mercenaries, who were less loyal and more prone to desertion. Meanwhile, the empire's borders were constantly under threat from barbarian groups like the Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns, who increasingly encroached on Roman territory. These challenges culminated in the sacking of Rome in 410 CE by the Visigoths, and again in 455 CE by the Vandals, marking the beginning of the empire's collapse. Despite the end of the Western Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire continued to thrive in the East for centuries. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 to the Ottoman Turks marked the final end of the Roman Empire, but the influence of Rome persisted long after its collapse. The Roman legacy lived on through the Byzantine Empire, the Catholic Church, and the legal and political systems of the Western world. Roman culture, law, and governance provided the foundation for the development of modern Europe and the Western world. The story of the Roman Empire serves as a reminder of the cyclical nature of history, how civilizations rise, peak, and eventually fall, but their legacies endure, influencing future generations. The lessons of Rome, its political innovations, its achievements in art and engineering, and its eventual decline continue to resonate today, offering insights into the challenges of maintaining power, prosperity, and stability. The Roman Empire may have fallen, but its impact on the world remains an indelible part of human history.
The fall of the Roman Empire left behind an enduring legacy that continues to shape the modern world. Though the empire itself was divided and ultimately fell to external pressures, the ideals and achievements of Rome influenced the development of Western civilization. One of the most lasting aspects of the Roman Empire was its legal system. Roman law, particularly the Corpus Juris Civilis, or the body of civil law, compiled under the Byzantine Emperor Justinian I in the 6th century, became the basis for many legal systems in Europe and beyond. This body of law emphasized the protection of individual rights, property, and contracts, forming the foundation for modern legal principles. The idea of a legal framework that governed not only the aristocracy, but also common citizens, laid the groundwork for the rule of law that is central to democratic societies today. Rome's political ideas, particularly those related to governance, citizenship, and republicanism, influenced the development of democratic governments in later centuries. The idea of elected representatives, the separation of powers, and checks and balances can be traced back to Roman political structures. The United States Constitution, for example, drew heavily from Roman republican ideals, specifically in its structure of governance and legal foundations. Rome's architectural and engineering achievements also had a profound impact. The Romans' use of arches, vaults, and concrete enabled the construction of large, durable structures that have influenced architectural design for centuries. The aqueducts that brought water into cities, the Roman roads that connected the empire, and the grand monuments such as the Colosseum and the Pantheon have inspired generations of architects and engineers. These architectural feats demonstrated the Roman mastery of engineering and their commitment to public works, which facilitated urbanization, trade, and the integration of a vast empire. The Roman road network, which spanned over 50,000 miles, not only allowed for rapid military movement, but also served as the backbone for trade and communication, bringing the empire closer together. The spread of Christianity, which became the official religion of the Roman Empire in the 4th century, is another lasting impact. Christianity flourished under Roman rule, and despite the empire's decline, it continued to grow and spread across Europe and beyond. The Roman Catholic Church became a central institution in Europe during the Middle Ages and played a pivotal role in the preservation of Roman culture and knowledge. The Church also became a unifying force in medieval Europe, providing continuity in the absence of a strong centralized political system. Additionally, the spread of Roman culture, including language, literature, and art, left a lasting mark on European civilizations. Latin, the language of the Romans, became the foundation of the Romance languages, Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian, and continues to influence many modern languages. Roman literature, philosophy, and art also had a profound impact on Western thought, with works by authors such as Virgil, Cicero, and Ovid continuing to be studied and admired. The art and architectural style of Rome, with its focus on realism and grandeur, influenced Renaissance artists and architects who looked to the classical period for inspiration. While the Roman Empire may have fallen, Its intellectual, cultural, and legal contributions helped shape the medieval and modern worlds. The fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE, marked by the deposition of the last Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was not the end of the Roman influence, but rather the beginning of a new phase in European history. The Byzantine Empire, centered in Constantinople, preserved many aspects of Roman culture, law, and governance, acting as a bridge between the ancient and medieval worlds. The legacy of the Roman Empire continued to influence the Renaissance and Enlightenment periods, with thinkers and leaders looking back to Rome's achievements as a model for their own political and cultural developments. The fall of Rome, while marking the end of an era, did not erase the Roman legacy. It continued to influence every aspect of European life and in many ways continues to shape the world today. The rise and fall of the Roman Empire offers important lessons about the nature of power, the fragility of empires, and the enduring influence of culture and law. As one of the most significant civilizations in history, Rome's contributions to politics, law, architecture, religion, and culture have left an indelible mark on the world, proving that while empires may fall, their legacies can last for millennia.
The story of the Roman Empire is not just a tale of political conquest, but also of cultural diffusion. The Roman Empire, at its peak, encompassed diverse peoples, cultures, and languages, but Roman influence was so profound that it shaped much of the ancient world. From the spread of Roman law and political structures to the integration of Roman language and customs across conquered regions, the empire created a unified identity that would resonate for centuries. One of the key factors in Rome's success was its ability to absorb and adapt elements from other cultures, such as the Etruscans, Greeks, and Egyptians. The Romans were skilled in taking the best aspects of these cultures and incorporating them into their own systems of governance, architecture, and art. Greek culture, in particular, had a lasting impact on Rome, especially in the realms of philosophy, literature, and the arts. Roman intellectuals and statesmen admired Greek philosophy and often sought to blend it with their own practical approach to governance. This fusion of Greek and Roman ideals laid the foundation for much of Western thought, with philosophers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius incorporating Stoic philosophy into their political and personal lives. However, Rome's expansionist policies, while bringing wealth and cultural exchange, also sowed the seeds of its eventual decline. As the empire expanded, it became increasingly difficult to manage such a vast territory. The logistical challenges of governing a sprawling empire, defending its borders, and maintaining internal stability put immense strain on the empire's resources. The Roman military, once the empire's greatest strength, began to weaken as it relied more on mercenaries rather than citizen soldiers. This shift in military composition led to a decrease in discipline and loyalty, which in turn made the empire more vulnerable to external threats. The empire's borders were constantly under attack from barbarian tribes such as the Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns. These invasions, compounded by internal unrest and economic difficulties, contributed to the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. In 410 CE, the Visigoths sacked Rome, and in 455 CE, the Vandals did the same, signaling the end of the empire's dominance. The fall of Rome in 476 CE, marked by the deposition of the last Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, is often seen as the definitive end of the Western Roman Empire. However, it is important to note that the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, continued for nearly another 1,000 years. The Byzantine Empire, with its capital in Constantinople, preserved many aspects of Roman culture, law, and governance, and acted as a continuation of the Roman legacy in the East. The Byzantine Empire survived for centuries, weathering invasions from the Seljuk Turks, Crusaders, and ultimately the Ottoman Turks, who finally captured Constantinople in 1453. The fall of Constantinople marked the end of the Roman Empire, but its cultural and intellectual legacy endured.
The Byzantine Empire preserved Roman legal and political traditions, as well as Christian theology, which would later influence the development of the Renaissance and the foundations of modern Western civilization. In the centuries following the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the medieval period saw the rise of feudalism and the influence of the Catholic Church, which was deeply rooted in Roman religious traditions. The preservation of Roman knowledge, particularly through the efforts of the Church and scholars in the Byzantine Empire, laid the groundwork for the Renaissance, a period that saw a revival of interest in classical art, philosophy, and political thought. This revival was also shaped by the rediscovery of ancient Roman texts and the study of Roman governance, law, and architecture. The Renaissance thinkers, such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Niccolò Machiavelli, looked back to Roman ideals as a source of inspiration and guidance. The Roman Empire's decline and fall also set the stage for the rise of new political and economic systems in Europe. The decentralized nature of medieval Europe, with its small kingdoms and city-states, was a direct result of the fragmentation of the Roman Empire. The Roman model of centralized governance was replaced by feudal systems, where power was divided among local lords. Despite the end of the Roman Empire, the structures it established continued to influence the development of European political institutions. Roman law, particularly the concept of jus civile, civil law, formed the basis for the legal systems of many European countries, and Roman ideals of citizenship and public service shaped the evolution of political theory in the modern era. The Roman Empire's legacy is undeniable, and its rise and fall have shaped the trajectory of Western civilization. The empire's political innovations, cultural achievements, and legal principles continue to resonate in the modern world, influencing contemporary politics, law, and culture. The decline and fall of Rome offer valuable lessons about the fragility of empires, the importance of political stability, and the enduring power of culture and intellectual achievement. Even though the Roman Empire itself may have fallen, the ideas and systems it developed have lived on, continuing to influence and inspire the world today.
The legacy of the Roman Empire transcends its borders and its fall, reaching into every corner of the modern world. After the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE, the medieval period saw the beginning of a new era dominated by the feudal system, yet Roman influence persisted in many aspects of life. The collapse of centralized Roman authority in the West resulted in a period of political fragmentation as various barbarian kingdoms and empires took hold across Europe. However, the Roman Empire's cultural, legal, and religious institutions remained influential, particularly in the Eastern Roman Empire, known as the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantines, though geographically removed from the western half of the empire, continued to maintain Roman laws, governance structures, and military traditions. The Byzantine Empire preserved much of the Roman cultural heritage, including architecture, engineering, and even Roman law, which would go on to shape modern legal systems. Under Emperor Justinian I, the Corpus Juris Civilis, or Body of Civil Law, was compiled in the 6th century and would later serve as the foundation for many legal systems in Europe. The idea of Roman citizenship, which had been extended to the provinces during the empire's height, remained influential throughout the Middle Ages and into modern times. Christianity, which had been legalized and became the state religion of the Roman Empire under Constantine in the early 4th century, continued to spread its influence throughout Europe. In the Byzantine Empire, Christianity became deeply integrated with the state, shaping both governance and daily life. After the fall of Rome, the Catholic Church emerged as a powerful institution, uniting the fragmented political landscape of medieval Europe. The Church preserved not only religious authority, but also Roman education and cultural practices, becoming a critical link between the ancient world and the future. Roman Catholicism was not only a religious force, but also an intellectual one, as monasteries became centers of learning, preserving ancient texts and fostering the education of future leaders. In this way, the Roman Empire's cultural legacy remained a guiding force in Europe for centuries.
Rome's architectural and engineering innovations continued to shape European cities long after the fall of the empire. Roman roads, bridges, and aqueducts, which were some of the most advanced engineering feats of the ancient world, laid the foundation for the infrastructure of medieval Europe. These constructions enabled the movement of people, goods, and ideas across vast distances, linking Europe together and fostering trade and cultural exchange. Roman architectural principles, such as the use of arches and domes, were revived during the Renaissance, where architects and artists looked back to Rome's grandeur for inspiration. The rediscovery of Roman texts and the revival of classical ideals during the Renaissance led to the flourishing of art, philosophy, and science, marking the end of the medieval era and the beginning of the modern age. Roman contributions to law and governance were not confined to the political structures of the Byzantine Empire or the Catholic Church. The influence of Roman republicanism, which emphasized the idea of elected representatives and the rights of citizens, was felt in the formation of modern democratic systems. The American founding fathers, for example, drew on Roman principles of governance when designing the Constitution of the United States. Roman ideas of citizenship, legal rights, and political representation were foundational to the democratic ideals that took shape in the modern world. Despite the internal decay that contributed to the fall of Rome, its ideas and institutions lived on, adapted and transformed by later generations. The Roman military system, once the empire's backbone, provided the basis for the development of modern armies. Roman tactics, formations, and organization influenced the development of military strategy throughout history. The Roman legion's discipline, training, and use of advanced weaponry set a standard for future armies in Europe and beyond. The spread of Roman law, the preservation of Roman culture by the Church, and the influence of Roman governance provided the foundation for the political, legal, and cultural systems of modern Europe and the Americas. While the physical empire may have crumbled, the ideas of Rome endured, continuing to shape the course of history long after the fall of Constantinople in 1453. The history of the Roman Empire serves as a powerful reminder of the transient nature of power, and yet the lasting influence that great civilizations can have on the world. Even as the empire fell, the values, innovations, and systems it created continued to evolve and permeate into every aspect of the modern world. The lessons of Rome, about the dangers of political instability, the importance of infrastructure, and the endurance of culture, offer insight into the rise and fall of other civilizations and empires throughout history. Rome's ultimate decline, though long and gradual, marks a crucial turning point in the history of the West, transitioning Europe from the ancient world to the medieval period and eventually to the Renaissance and modernity. The story of the Roman Empire, from its glorious heights to its fall, is not merely the story of an ancient civilization, but also a blueprint for understanding the complexities of empire, power, and legacy in the world today.
The decline of the Roman Empire offers important lessons about the impermanence of power and the fragility of civilizations. While the Roman Empire's influence can still be felt today in law, governance, and culture, its collapse serves as a cautionary tale for contemporary societies. The empire's inability to adapt to changing conditions, such as military overextension, political corruption, economic instability, and internal divisions, contributed to its eventual fall. The process was neither sudden nor linear. Instead, it unfolded over centuries, with the Roman Empire experiencing a slow erosion of its strength before its final collapse in 476 CE. One of the main factors that led to the fall of Rome was its military overextension. At its peak, the Roman Empire controlled vast territories, stretching from Britain to North Africa and from Spain to Mesopotamia. Defending such a large expanse of land required enormous resources and manpower. As the empire grew, so did the challenges of maintaining control over its borders. The Roman army, once the empire's greatest strength, became increasingly reliant on mercenaries, who were often less loyal than the Roman legions of old. The pressure of defending the empire from invading barbarian groups, such as the Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns, stretched the army thin and weakened the empire's ability to respond to internal problems. Alongside military challenges, economic instability played a major role in the decline of Rome. The Roman Empire was based on agriculture, slave labor, and conquest.
However, as the empire expanded, the supply of slaves decreased, and the costs of maintaining the empire's vast infrastructure and military forces drained the treasury. High taxes, inflation, and the devaluation of Roman currency weakened the economic system, making it difficult for the empire to sustain itself. The shift from a largely agrarian economy to one dependent on commerce also created imbalances, leading to economic disparity between the wealthy elite and the poor masses. Social unrest, exacerbated by economic problems, led to widespread dissatisfaction among the Roman population. Another significant factor in the empire's decline was political instability. The Roman Empire, particularly in its later years, was plagued by corruption, inefficiency, and a lack of strong leadership. Emperors were often overthrown or assassinated, leading to a lack of continuity in governance. In the 3rd century CE, the empire was divided into the Tetrarchy, where the empire was ruled by multiple emperors, but this division only weakened the empire further. As the central government became increasingly ineffective, local leaders and military commanders gained more power, further fragmenting the empire. In addition to internal problems, the Roman Empire faced external pressures from barbarian invasions. The migration of Germanic tribes into Roman territory, combined with the incursions of the Huns from the east, put immense strain on the empire's borders. In 410 CE, the Visigoths, led by King Alaric, sacked Rome, and in 455 CE, the Vandals did the same. These invasions, along with the growing power of the barbarian tribes within the empire, eroded the Roman Empire's authority. The final blow came in 476 CE, when the last Roman emperor in the west, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. This event marked the end of the Western Roman Empire, although the Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire, continued for nearly 1,000 more years. The Byzantine Empire preserved much of Roman culture, law, and governance, but it faced its own challenges, eventually falling to the Ottoman Turks in 1453. The fall of the Roman Empire in the West marked a turning point in European history. The collapse of centralized Roman authority ushered in the Middle Ages, a period characterized by feudalism, the rise of the Catholic Church, and the fragmentation of Europe into smaller kingdoms. While Roman infrastructure and culture were disrupted, the legacy of Rome lived on in the traditions and ideas that shaped medieval Europe. Roman law, in particular, continued to influence the development of legal systems throughout Europe. The Catholic Church, which had become a powerful institution during the Roman Empire, played a crucial role in preserving Roman knowledge, culture, and governance during the Middle Ages. Christianity, which had spread throughout the empire, became the dominant religion in Europe, uniting people across the continent under a common faith. As the medieval period progressed, Roman ideas and innovations were rediscovered during the Renaissance, when scholars and artists looked back to the classical world for inspiration. The Renaissance saw a revival of interest in Roman art, architecture, literature, and philosophy, sparking a cultural rebirth that influenced the development of modern Western civilization. The fall of the Roman Empire did not mark the end of Roman influence, but rather the beginning of a new chapter in history. The political, legal, and cultural foundations laid by Rome continue to shape the modern world, with many of its ideas and systems still relevant today. The rise and fall of the Roman Empire serve as a reminder that empires are not eternal, but their legacies can endure through the ages.
The Roman Empire's profound impact on the modern world goes beyond its political and military achievements. Its contributions to law, infrastructure, and culture have left an indelible mark that still influences contemporary society. Roman law, one of the empire's most enduring legacies, became the foundation for legal systems throughout Europe and beyond. The Corpus Juris Civilis, compiled under the Byzantine Emperor Justinian I, is often considered one of the most important legal texts ever created. It laid the groundwork for the modern concept of justice, including the rights of individuals, property law, and contract law. This body of law would go on to shape European legal systems and eventually the rule of law in the Western world. Roman concepts of citizenship, legal rights, and republican governance also influenced later democratic systems, particularly in Europe and the Americas. The political structures of ancient Rome, from the Senate to the magistrates, provided a model for modern governance, where elected representatives and the rule of law became fundamental principles. Roman republicanism, in particular, shaped the development of modern democratic governments, including the United States. The Roman Empire also revolutionized the infrastructure of the ancient world. Roman roads, bridges, and aqueducts are prime examples of their engineering prowess. The vast network of Roman roads, stretching over 50,000 miles, enabled the rapid movement of armies, trade goods, and communication across the empire. This infrastructure played a crucial role in Rome's military success, as it allowed for swift deployments of troops to protect the empire's borders. Similarly, the Romans' construction of aqueducts, which transported water to urban centers, improved sanitation and public health, leaving a legacy of engineering excellence. In architecture, the Romans introduced innovative building techniques such as the arch, the vault, and the dome, which would influence construction methods for centuries. The Pantheon in Rome, with its vast domed ceiling, remains one of the greatest architectural achievements of the ancient world. These architectural innovations were revived during the Renaissance and continue to influence modern buildings and structures. The Roman Empire also had a lasting impact on culture, particularly through the spread of Latin, the empire's language. Latin not only served as the official language of the Roman government and military, but also became the language of scholarship, law, and the Catholic Church. Over time, Latin evolved into the Romance languages, Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian, spoken by millions of people today. Roman literature, philosophy, and art also had a lasting influence on Western culture. Writers like Virgil, Ovid, and Cicero are still studied and revered for their contributions to literature and political thought. Roman philosophers such as Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, and Epictetus shaped Western philosophy, particularly in the areas of ethics and Stoicism. Roman art, influenced by Greek traditions, focused on realism and idealized representations of the human form. The legacy of Roman art can be seen in the works of Renaissance artists like Michelangelo and Raphael, who drew inspiration from classical ideals. Despite the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE, the Byzantine Empire carried on many of the traditions and achievements of Rome. The Byzantine Empire preserved Roman law, culture, and governance for nearly 1,000 years after the fall of Rome. It served as a bridge between the ancient and medieval worlds, preserving much of the knowledge and cultural practices of the Roman Empire. In the Middle Ages, the Roman Catholic Church, which had grown out of the Roman Empire, became a unifying force in Europe, ensuring the continuation of Roman ideals in a fractured continent. The fall of the Western Roman Empire marked a transition from the ancient to the medieval world, but the Roman legacy continued to shape European civilization. During the Renaissance, there was a renewed interest in Roman culture, art, and philosophy, leading to a cultural rebirth that influenced the development of modern Western thought. The Roman Empire's impact can still be seen today in legal systems, government structures, architecture, and culture. Its achievements in law, engineering, and art continue to inspire and influence modern society. The rise and fall of Rome also serve as a reminder of the cyclical nature of history, how empires rise, flourish, and eventually decline. While the Roman Empire may have fallen, its legacy endures, influencing every aspect of the modern world. The lessons of Rome about governance, law, military strategy, and infrastructure continue to resonate today, offering valuable insights for contemporary societies. As we reflect on the Roman Empire's achievements and decline, we gain a deeper understanding of the dynamics of power, the importance of stability, and the enduring impact of culture and law on human civilization. In conclusion, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire is a story of ambition, greatness, and eventual decline, but also one of enduring influence. The empire's political, legal, and cultural contributions laid the foundation for much of modern Western civilization, and its legacy continues to shape the world we live in today. The fall of the Western Roman Empire marked the end of an era, but its influence, like the empire itself, remains timeless.
The legacy of the Roman Empire endures not only through its direct influence on governance, law, and culture, but also in the way it shaped the identity and development of subsequent civilizations. After the fall of Rome in the West, its power and ideas did not disappear. They were absorbed and adapted by the various cultures and societies that followed. The Middle Ages, marked by the fragmentation of Europe, witnessed the rise of new political entities, but many of the structures, beliefs, and ideals of the Roman Empire were preserved. The Christianization of the Roman Empire in the 4th century CE was one of the most significant events in Roman history, and it profoundly influenced the course of European civilization. With the establishment of Christianity as the state religion under Emperor Constantine, Rome became the foundation of Christian Europe. Even as the Western Roman Empire collapsed, the Catholic Church, the spiritual heir of Roman religious authority, emerged as a unifying force in the fragmented medieval world. The Church not only served as a religious institution, but also took on the mantle of political and intellectual authority, preserving much of Roman knowledge and culture. The Latin language, once the language of Roman government and law, continued to be the language of scholarship and the Catholic Church throughout the Middle Ages. This allowed the intellectual traditions of Rome to be transmitted across generations, influencing the Renaissance and the development of modern Western thought. During the Renaissance, a period of renewed interest in the classical world, scholars and artists rediscovered the achievements of the Romans. Renaissance thinkers, including Petrarch, Leonardo da Vinci, and Michelangelo, looked back to Roman ideals of art, philosophy, and governance for inspiration. The rediscovery of ancient Roman texts, particularly those of philosophers like Cicero and historians like Livy, had a profound effect on Renaissance humanism, which emphasized the value of classical learning and the potential of human achievement. The influence of Roman architecture, art, and engineering also found expression during the Renaissance. Roman-inspired buildings, such as the grand domes of St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City and the classical columns of many Renaissance palaces, became symbols of the revival of classical ideals. The study of Roman ruins, sculptures, and paintings spurred an artistic revolution that sought to emulate the grandeur and sophistication of ancient Rome. Beyond the Renaissance, the rise of modern nation-states in Europe was deeply influenced by Roman political and legal thought. The Roman Republic's emphasis on elected officials and the rule of law was a model for the creation of democratic systems, particularly in the United States. Roman law, with its focus on justice, rights, and equality before the law, influenced the development of legal systems in Europe and the Americas. The concepts of citizenship, civic duty, and republican government that flourished in Rome were adapted into the modern principles of democracy and civil rights. Furthermore, the Roman military's organization and strategy were studied and emulated by future military leaders. The Roman legion's emphasis on discipline, training, and tactical flexibility became the model for modern armies. The military strategies developed by Roman generals, such as Julius Caesar and Augustus, influenced the development of military theory for centuries. The Roman Empire also left a lasting impact on the spread of Christianity, which had become the dominant religion of the empire by the time of its collapse. Christianity, with its roots in Roman territory, continued to spread across Europe and eventually the rest of the world. The Catholic Church, which grew out of the Roman Empire's Christianization, played a central role in preserving Roman culture and knowledge during the Middle Ages. It was also instrumental in spreading Roman religious practices and teachings, which shaped the religious landscape of Europe for centuries to come. The rise of Islam in the 7th century CE, following the fall of the Roman Empire, further spread the legacy of Rome. Islamic civilization, particularly during the Golden Age of Islam, was deeply influenced by Roman and Greek knowledge. Many of the classical texts from Rome were translated into Arabic, and scholars in the Islamic world preserved, studied, and expanded upon the works of Roman philosophers, mathematicians, and scientists. The Romans' contributions to medicine, mathematics, and engineering found new life in the Islamic world, which helped preserve and advance the scientific and intellectual traditions of antiquity. Even after the collapse of the Roman Empire, its legacy lived on in the cultures and societies that followed. The medieval period, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, and even the modern era all owe much of their development to the ideas and achievements of the Roman Empire. In political governance, law, architecture, literature, and science, the Romans laid the groundwork for many of the institutions and practices that continue to shape the world today. The fall of the Roman Empire marked the end of one chapter of history, but the beginning of another. While the empire may have disappeared, its influence continues to be felt, and its legacy remains a cornerstone of Western civilization. The rise and fall of Rome offer a timeless lesson. Empires may crumble, but their ideas and achievements can endure for millennia, continuing to shape the course of history long after their physical demise. The Roman Empire, in its grandeur and its decline, stands as a testament to human ambition, achievement, and the impermanence of power.
The story of the Roman Empire is ultimately one of transformation, of an empire that began as a republic and morphed into an autocracy, of a society that was initially grounded in republican ideals, but later became characterized by imperial grandeur and autocratic rule. While Rome's political structures, including its Senate and system of governance, gradually gave way to imperial rule, they laid the foundation for the political systems that emerged in the centuries after the empire's fall. The enduring influence of Roman political ideas is especially evident in the structure of modern democratic governments, which owe much to Rome's concept of citizenship, public service, and the rule of law. Roman law, one of the most significant legacies of the empire, not only shaped the governance of the empire, but also influenced the creation of legal systems that govern countries worldwide today. The Roman notion of law as the foundation of governance, with its emphasis on the protection of individual rights, property, and contracts, continues to be a guiding principle in many modern legal systems. Furthermore, the idea of Roman citizenship, whereby individuals were granted certain rights and responsibilities, was an innovation that influenced the formation of modern national identities and citizenship laws. The Roman Empire's legacy in urbanization and infrastructure also set the stage for future civilizations. The Romans built cities, roads, aqueducts, and public spaces that became models for subsequent urban planning in Europe. The Roman road network, stretching across the empire, allowed for the swift movement of armies, traders, and information, and it laid the foundation for modern transportation systems. Roman urban planning principles, which emphasized functionality and the integration of residential, commercial, and public spaces, influenced the development of European cities well into the Middle Ages and beyond. The Roman legacy in architecture and engineering is perhaps most visible in their innovations in building techniques. The use of concrete, the arch, the vault, and the dome allowed the Romans to build structures that were not only durable, but also aesthetically impressive. The Pantheon in Rome, with its massive domed ceiling, remains one of the greatest architectural feats of antiquity. Roman architectural principles became a model during the Renaissance and continue to influence modern building design. The influence of Roman culture extended far beyond architecture and engineering. The Roman Empire's patronage of the arts and its incorporation of Greek artistic traditions helped shape the development of Western art. Roman sculpture, painting, and mosaics reflected both the grandeur of the empire and its focus on realism. In literature, the Romans inherited much from the Greeks, yet they also made significant contributions of their own, producing epic poems, histories, and philosophical works. Writers like Virgil, Ovid, Cicero, and Seneca were not only influential in their time, but have also remained central to the Western literary canon. Roman thought, especially in philosophy, has had a profound impact on Western intellectual history. The Stoic philosophers, such as Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, were influential not only in their own time, but also in the centuries that followed. Stoicism, which emphasized virtue, reason, and self-control, became a dominant philosophical school of thought in Europe, influencing later thinkers during the Renaissance and Enlightenment periods. The Romans also contributed greatly to the fields of science and medicine. Roman engineers developed advanced systems for water distribution, such as the aqueducts, which brought water to cities and facilitated the growth of urban life. Roman physicians, like Galen, became prominent figures in the development of medical theory, influencing medical practices well into the Middle Ages and Renaissance. Even after the fall of Rome, the knowledge accumulated by Roman engineers, philosophers, and scientists continued to be preserved, studied, and built upon. The preservation of Roman texts and ideas, particularly by scholars in the Byzantine Empire and later in the Islamic world, ensured that Roman achievements continued to influence future generations. The collapse of the Western Roman Empire did not mark the end of Roman influence. While political authority in the West fragmented into small kingdoms and feudal states, the cultural and intellectual legacy of Rome continued to shape European development. The rise of the Byzantine Empire in the East ensured the survival of Roman culture, law, and governance for another 1,000 years, albeit under a different name. The Byzantine Empire preserved many aspects of Roman society, particularly its legal system, and was responsible for the transmission of Roman knowledge to the Renaissance.
In Western Europe, the collapse of the Western Roman Empire led to a period of decentralization and feudalism, but the Christian Church, which had become the dominant institution during the Roman Empire, preserved Roman traditions and acted as a unifying force in a fragmented continent. The Church's role in preserving Roman education and scholarship cannot be overstated, as it kept Roman intellectual traditions alive and facilitated their transmission throughout the Middle Ages. This intellectual continuity laid the groundwork for the Renaissance, a period of renewed interest in the classical world, where scholars and artists rediscovered Roman texts, art, and philosophy. The Renaissance saw a revival of interest in Roman ideals, leading to a flowering of art, architecture, and intellectual thought that would shape the course of European history. The legacy of the Roman Empire is also deeply intertwined with the development of Western Christianity. Christianity, which became the state religion of Rome in the 4th century CE, continued to grow and spread even after the empire's fall. The Roman Catholic Church, as the spiritual successor to the Roman Empire, became a powerful institution in the Middle Ages and played a central role in the preservation and transmission of Roman cultural achievements. Christianity's spread across Europe transformed the continent and established a new religious and cultural order that would dominate for centuries. The fall of the Roman Empire marked the end of one era, but the beginning of another. The Roman Empire, with all its triumphs and failures, remains a defining civilization in the history of the West. Its political, cultural, and legal innovations laid the foundation for modern Western society, and its influence continues to shape the world today. The lessons of the Roman Empire, its rise, its grandeur, its fall, and its enduring legacy continue to resonate, providing insights into the nature of power, governance, and civilization.
The Roman Empire's rise and fall serve as a profound narrative about the complexities of empire, leadership, and the delicate balance between strength and vulnerability. At its zenith, the Roman Empire was a beacon of military, cultural, and intellectual achievement, but its eventual decline underscores the inevitable cycle of empires. The ultimate collapse of the Western Roman Empire was not a sudden event, but a protracted decline, fueled by a combination of internal weaknesses and external pressures. As the empire's power waned, its once unified structure splintered, leading to an era of uncertainty and transition. The Roman world became increasingly divided, not only by political and military failures, but also by cultural and religious shifts. By the time the empire officially ended in 476 CE, with the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, known as the Byzantine Empire, continued to stand as a testament to the endurance of Roman traditions, though under different circumstances. While the western half of the empire succumbed to barbarian invasions, the Byzantine Empire continued to preserve Roman law, governance, and cultural achievements. The Byzantine Empire, centered in Constantinople, would survive for nearly another 1,000 years, fostering the legacy of Roman civilization. Despite the fall of the Roman Empire in the West, the cultural and intellectual contributions of Rome lived on in many forms. Roman legal systems and government structures were carried forward by successive civilizations, most notably in the Byzantine Empire and the early medieval kingdoms of Europe. Roman law, especially the Corpus Juris Civilis, compiled under Emperor Justinian, became the foundation for many modern legal systems. These legal frameworks have continued to influence governance throughout history, providing a model for the protection of individual rights and the rule of law. The preservation of Roman culture, knowledge, and infrastructure during the Middle Ages can largely be attributed to the Catholic Church, which became the dominant institution in Europe following the fall of Rome. The Church not only preserved Christian doctrine, but also acted as a custodian of Roman learning, ensuring that Roman intellectual traditions were passed down to future generations.
It was through the church's monasteries and libraries that much of the classical Roman texts survived the turbulent centuries following Rome's fall. The Middle Ages saw the rise of a new socio-political order, but Roman ideas and infrastructure still played a vital role. Roman road networks, aqueducts, and architectural principles continued to influence the development of cities and kingdoms. Additionally, the Roman system of governance, with its emphasis on the rule of law and citizenship, was carried forward by later European rulers and states. The fall of the Roman Empire also paved the way for the rise of new empires and civilizations. As the Western Roman Empire disintegrated, barbarian groups such as the Visigoths, Vandals, and Franks seized Roman territories. However, these new kingdoms did not entirely erase the Roman legacy. Instead, they absorbed and adapted many aspects of Roman governance, military strategy, and culture. The Holy Roman Empire, which emerged in the medieval period, claimed to be the successor of the Roman Empire and sought to revive Roman traditions, particularly in governance and law. The Italian Renaissance, which began in the 14th century, marked a significant turning point in the rediscovery of Roman art, literature, and philosophy. The intellectual movement of humanism, which focused on the study of classical texts and the revival of Roman ideals, paved the way for the explosion of artistic and scientific innovation. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael drew inspiration from Roman architecture and sculpture, while scholars studied Roman texts to understand the principles of governance, law, and rhetoric. The Renaissance's focus on the classical world not only revived Roman culture, but also helped shape the foundations of modern Western civilization. The rise of the modern nation-state, which emerged during the Renaissance and continued to evolve through the Enlightenment and into the modern era, also owes much to Roman political thought. The Roman Republic's political system, despite its eventual transformation into an empire, served as a model for later democratic systems, particularly in the United States. The philosophical and intellectual foundations of Roman thought, particularly in the realms of ethics, governance, and citizenship, continue to influence political and legal philosophy today. Roman philosophers such as Cicero, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius were among the first to explore ideas about justice, civic duty, and the nature of governance that are still relevant in modern political thought. In this way, the fall of the Roman Empire did not mark the end of Roman influence, but instead marked a new chapter in world history, one in which Roman ideals would continue to evolve and shape the course of civilization. In the end, the Roman Empire's rise and fall are a testament to the complexities of imperial power, governance, and culture. While the empire itself may have crumbled, the ideas, innovations, and institutions it developed continue to shape the modern world. Rome's legacy lives on in our legal systems, governments, art, architecture, and philosophy, and its influence can be seen in the continued prominence of democratic ideals, the pursuit of knowledge, and the rule of law. The rise and fall of the Roman Empire remind us that while empires may rise and fall, the ideas they foster can endure, often far longer than the civilizations that birthed them.